Hey guys, Teresa here with Sippy Couture. Welcome back to my channel and thanks so much for watching. Today I'm going to show you guys how we did this glittered nutcracker, but first I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and also head on over to our Sippy Couture community group on Facebook. We do some lives, that's where I post my codes, and also there's a few states that I'll be going to and doing in-person events, and I would love for you to join me. So head on over there for all the info. Like I said, we're doing the glittered one today. I'm working on the template for you guys, so just give me a minute to get that out. And then I've had such a great request for this neon nutcracker one. That's in the works also, and I do have an in-person event scheduled for this one too. So let's get started, guys. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Tell me what you think in the comments, and thanks again for your support. All right, guys, we're doing this design on the 32 Plump from Tipsy Magnolia. It's seriously perfect for these nutcrackers. The design fits us so well. We're going to start by removing this bottom piece so we can do the pretty little tumbler butt. I have my little screwdriver and a mallet, and I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to wedge it just right in there, and then we're going to hit it a few times. You'll hear whenever it comes loose because it gives almost like a hollow sound to it. It was that second hit that did it. So do that, put this up. You don't have to worry about ruining the bottom of your tumbler. This is a part that everything seals in with, and whenever you go to separate this, your screwdriver goes here, and it's before this little lip. There's like an inside divider area right here, so you don't have to worry about getting into that and mess anything up because you're not even close to that seal. So we're gonna go ahead and get this sanded, washed, and spray painted. This whole video is voiceovered and sped up. That way it stays within time because it was quite a bit of editing to this. So like I said, let me know if you have any questions. For the spray paint part, we're going to go ahead and get a nice even coat on here. Make sure you get your tumbler butt and then go throughout your whole tumbler. We're just going to spray paint it white. I like to do light coats on this. That way nothing gets drippy. So this ended up getting 2 coats before I was happy with it. Okay, so this is my little nutcracker ruler that I use. For now, this is how I map everything out. I line it up to my tumbler and I use my cup stripe assistant and I go around and I make lines. I mark off the top of the stripe section, the top of the body, the top of the face, and that gives me everything I need. That belt section, we're not worried about that. That whole section, you'll see later how the glitter's done, and we just lay that vinyl over that, so we don't even need to worry about anything with the belt right now. So get whatever you need to make the right measurements and go ahead and get those lines all the way around. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tape off the legs for where the little stripes are. This part's super easy. This is 1-inch painter's tape. Get a line straight down your tumbler to make sure that first piece goes on straight. That's the biggest thing with this design, is making sure everything lines up straight and it's super clean. So as long as you put that first tape on, you're good to go. It's going to need 10 pieces of tape all the way around, and you can see how I alternated the tape. I went ahead and put 1 piece of tape down, and then I put the next piece just as a spacer. I laid the following piece, and then I removed that little temporary spacer piece, and I just kept alternating, like I said, all the way around. After that was done, I took my knife and I trimmed off a straight line at the top because this does need glitter, and I want to make sure that it doesn't overlap in any of those glitter areas. Next, we're going to take a big piece of painter's tape and we're going to tape off the face section. The reason why we're doing this is that, like I said, it needs to be a super clean design, and since that face is getting a light glitter, I want to make sure that it stays clean and it doesn't get any paint or any other glitter over it. So I used a big piece, I think it's maybe 3-inch painter's tape, and then a little 1-inch strip, and that's enough to cover that top section. For the next part, we're doing our triangles for the top. These are the crowns. I like to use, you can use stencil vinyl. I like to use either Duck Brand shelf liner or clear contact paper. I find that it's a lot cheaper. It doesn't leave a residue. It's super easy to cut, so that's kind of my go-to. Line these up on your tumbler. This measurement that I provided in that little side screenshot a little earlier, that fits to where these triangles will lay perfect without a layer of epoxy. You may have to overlap it just a little, or you can space them just a tiny tad if you do have a layer of epoxy on there, and it just works great. Always measure your cup and double check that though. Next, we're getting that layer of spray paint on here for the base for that gold glitter. I went a little too close, so just be careful with that. We definitely don't want that part to get a bit runny. Double check those strips of tape. You want to make sure that they're laid down really nice so the paint or glitter doesn't seep into this next step. Continuing on with the base paint portion of this, I have green paint. I always like to give a base paint so my glitter has a little more depth, so I'm just getting 1 layer on here to help with that. My preferred glitter application method is always going to be speed dry from Mr. Nola's. You really just need a thin coat, and this stuff will set up within 3 to 4 hours to where we can go ahead and spray paint it and start removing the tape, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So just a really thin layer, drop your glitters on and let it sit. It's been about 4 hours and this has already set. What I did was take it outside. I used clear gloss spray paint and gave it maybe 3 super light coats of clear spray paint. I want to make sure that I get great coverage on that and nothing moves. Next, we're going to start removing some of this tape. The triangles that we used for the top, it's cut perfect to where it overlaps just a little at the top. So all you have to do is feel to the inside of your tumbler and your finger will catch a piece of the triangle, like that very top part, and you could just peel that away. Like I said, this was all sprayed really great, so nothing's moving around on us here. This is completely locked into place, and these pieces will come up really easily. Continue on removing your tape from all the other areas. If you do find that there's a few pieces of tape that are really set with that epoxy, maybe you left it overnight or something and it's a little bit stubborn, use your heat gun just a tad, like the tiniest bit, to warm it up, and you'll find that the tape removes easier. Next up, we're putting a layer of tape right back around that top. We're going to glitter inside those triangles, and we don't want it to get onto the face part. For this part, I'm going to go ahead and use UV resin. You'll see me using this a little bit in this video. Just a new method that I've tried a few times and I'm very comfortable with it, but only on translucent glitters. I will not use this method for any glitters that are opaque. The trick with UV resin is the UV has to get through the glitter to cure fully, and I'm just not comfortable not having, using an opaque glitter. So full disclosure on that. I have my paintbrush. I'm painting in these areas. This is going to be white, so I'm really getting close. I'm taking my time and making sure that this UV does not go onto the gold. This glitter is set so great that even if it sprinkles onto there, we can easily dust it off. But if you get UV resin on that gold section, then you'll have a bit more of a mess. So take your time, go around, paint that with a little paintbrush if you have to, whatever is easiest for you, and make sure that epoxy is on there, once again smooth, so we don't have any ripples in our glitter. We're doing that to the top, and we're also going to do it to the bottom part where this glitter is at the bottom. If you are not using a transparent glitter for this and you're doing something a little more opaque, then you can do this same method, but instead of UV, you can use just regular epoxy, Mod Podge, or whatever your other glitter application preferred method is. Go ahead and drop down all your glitter. Use a piece of parchment paper if you need to lay it down and make sure nothing's super pokey. And then we're going to go ahead and have this set with the UV light. I set this for about 6 minutes on each section. I learned that little trick from Jennifer over at JPJ. It seems like that was a perfect amount of time to be able to set that and continue on. If you have a spot that has a piece of tape on it that you were protecting for a different section, within that 6 minutes, get over there and remove that strip of tape. There's a few areas here, and you'll see what I'm talking about, where when I was removing the tape, that UV set pretty quick, so the tape ripped and got set under the UV. Just take your craft knife and cut that off. You didn't do anything wrong. It's not a big deal. This is going to have a piece of pinstripe around here, so it will completely play it off, but just be careful of that and make sure you remove your tape somewhat soon. That way that doesn't happen. After that section is fully set, I'm going to do the same thing with UV resin and do the face part. A thin coat for here, especially if you're using an ultra fine glitter. What will happen if you go too thick is that the glitter will fall heavier in some of these sections where your epoxy is on thicker, and you'll have almost streaks or a difference of color in that. So you don't need a lot of UV resin, guys, just a super thin coat. Get it all the way around. I like to use a paintbrush, that way I can go right up against these lines very carefully. And drop your glitter on top and do the same thing with your light. Set it for about 6 minutes. All of that glitter is completely cured, so what I did was take it outside and I did about 3 coats of clear gloss spray paint. I want to be sure that nothing moves at all, so do light coats, get it on there, make sure it dries, then go ahead and do 1 or 2 more coats, however many you feel comfortable. You can even tap it with your finger, and as long as when you touch the glitter, no glitter comes off onto your finger, you have enough spray paint, is kind of my rule of thumb. I have my UV resin. I'm going to go ahead and pour this on here just lightly. I find that my glitter stays put more when there's a little puddle of UV resin under my finger that I can move around in circles. The times where I dropped any type of resin or epoxy and I actually felt the texture of the glitter and not almost a little puddle of epoxy under my hand, that was the time my glitter spread. So take your time, get this all the way around here, and set your light again. We're going to do 6 minutes from the top of the tumbler down, and then after that sits for a bit, we're going to take our light and switch it to the bottom and do another 6 minutes. Next up is my cup edging tool. I go around the bottom and give myself a really straight, clean line. I use acetone to remove any paint, and then we go on with our next coat of epoxy. This layer is going to be the layer just before our decals, so I want to make sure that this goes on as a smooth, clean layer. I like to use my heat gun to encourage it to spread out a little thinner, and then my torch to pop any bubbles. After this is completely set, maybe about 3 to 4 hours, I give it a light sand with some Imperial wet or dry sandpaper, and then we move on to decals. The belt part is just over an inch thick, and I just use my paper trimmer for that. You can run it through the Cricut if you want. For his face, I have these 2 little white parts that need to go behind the black of the eyeball, so I transfer that while it's still on my little paper. It's easy for me to do that. That way, whenever I put the black eyeballs on the white parts, I can see right where those little round pieces go back. It's a little easier for me to get them even and see it that way rather than laying on the tumbler. I put my piece of transfer tape on there, I turn it upside down, and I pull it from the back. For me, that's easier. Everything's mapped out and measured so the face fits perfect in that area. I get that down, and then I'm going to add his little teeth, and the face part is done. Next up, I go ahead and I take the belt area, and I only get the belt buckle on first. I line it up with his face, and I just kind of visually put that down towards a tumbler so I can make sure it's lined up even. For the belt, you want that bottom inside line of the belt to overlap where that line is going to cover up, where that seam is for the 2 glitters matching. Whenever we do the black belt part, it's going to go around the tumbler, and the belt is going to help hide that seam from where the white hits the green at the top of those little stripes. So get your belt buckle on. Get the belt buckle on first, because that will give you about how much room you need for these little I don't know where they are, the little button rope areas. It just gives you a good visual of how much room you have right there. After that, we're going to put our belt on, and we're going to do this seamless, guys. So we're going to do the hinge method, cut off a piece of the backing, lay it right up around that belt, go in a circle, and make sure it matches up. As long as it does match up and it overlaps that seam, then this is how I apply that vinyl. I rub it all the way around the tumbler, and I let the back remove itself. Take your vinyl, go right up against the back of that buckle, smush it in really good, and then use your craft knife to cut away that extra black strip. Something that could be really easy for you guys, if you're a little unsure of that area and you're afraid that you might have a little gap between where the black hits the belt or inside that belt buckle area where we're going to fill it in, you can grab a black Sharpie and do a little color inside that area, and it will help play it off once that vinyl hits there. For the inside of the belt buckle, we went ahead and contoured out a belt. I duplicated the belt buckle, I hid the outside of it, and then I just kept the inside spot, and that's what we're going to use to lay down in this middle area. Transfer tape will be the easiest way to put that on there. Just get it right into place, smash it down, and you're good to go. I like to use finishing tape for all of the striping. It's just easier to work with. You can get this from Mr. Nola's. This is the medium size transfer tape. If you didn't want to use this, you can use whatever vinyl of your choice and just run it through your Cricut to get your lines. So go around, put this down, and that's all this process is getting that right on the lines. As long as all of your lines was straight from the beginning, and that's where this part was really important at the beginning. As long as all of your lines were completely straight, you're not going to have any issues with this, and you'll have a really clean design. So go through, lay that down, and make your gentle cuts to release that transfer tape. Be super careful at the bottom of this tumbler whenever you're cutting off the extra bits of tape right here, that you don't cut too deep into your epoxy. If you do, you can compromise that seal, and we definitely don't need that to happen. Continuing on with this finishing tape, I keep saying the wrong thing. I always start in the back, that way it's kind of the back of the tumbler that has the little seam, and I run that tape all the way around. I don't put it at the top of the belt. We're skipping that part. We're just going around the bottom of his face, the top of his face. And then we're going to go ahead and fill in the little triangles. I don't have a template to do this for these triangles. I just do this by hand. I lay a piece down, I trim it into place, and then I do the next one. And that's all this process is right here, is one strip at a time, cutting it down into place and making sure my cuts are super clean. That way the tape doesn't overlap and it does lay flat. For this step, I like to get a layer of UV resin on here to make sure all of those seams lay down. Anytime that you're doing any type of vinyl or pinstriping and you're kind of iffy that it may lift under epoxy, a quick easy thing to do is get some UV resin on there, hit it with a light, and it will lay it down super quick. That ended up laying down really nice with one coat, so we're going to go ahead and pull this aside and we're going to get to the bottom of our tumbler. I like using these cute little laser cut tumbler tags from Wicked Gold. I get some paint and I smush it right down in there. It is cut with a silver backing, but the letters are clear and it's a little tough to see, so I give it a little more pop with that. While I had that paint out, I went ahead and put a little green in the inside part and gold on the outside just so that those glitters would have a bit of a base color. The easiest way to do this is to mix some glitter into your epoxy, and once again, I'm using Speed Dry. This tumbler tag has a little protective sheet on the front and back, so I'm going to take that off, and I put down a little drip of epoxy in there to seal up that little hole in the bottom. If you put your tumbler tag down first without putting down a little drop under there, a bubble will get trapped and it'll rise, and your tumbler tag can kind of lean to one side until you fix it. So take that extra precaution and get that down first. Put our green down around that. We're not going to bring our green all the way up to the tumbler tag. We're going to drip it pretty far around and then take our time and kind of inch it over with a popsicle stick to make sure that it slowly creeps up onto that section. If you do too much at once, you can flood that tumbler tag and mess the whole thing up. If that does happen, after it cures, you can pop that whole section up with a knife and go again, but better safe than sorry, just use a little. Also, we're going to take this little paper cup with a gold and go around the outside of that little gold ring. For that part, it's really easy to use an ultra fine glitter. It's easier to control the section that goes in. Use your heat gun to help thin it out and get it even, and then your torch to pop any bubbles. Once that is all set, I go ahead with my final layer of UV resin or epoxy in that section. This one I'm doing speed dry epoxy. Get that in, pop any bubbles, make sure it's coated evenly in there. Turn it a few times if it's on a desk to make sure it's level, and that bottom is done. About 4 hours later, after I know that's set, I take my sanding sponge and a piece of Imperial wet or dry sandpaper, and I go ahead and give this all one final coat to make sure that everything is very smooth, and this last layer of epoxy will go on really nice. I wash it really good with Dawn dish soap, make sure it's dry, and then my final layer of speed dry epoxy goes on here. This stuff is so great and it can be used as a final coat. It has all the protection needed so that it can fight yellowing over time. And that's it for this one, guys. Like I said, it's a really fun design. I love that we can change it up so much with the different glitters, or you can do like that other tumbler and throw some vinyl in the middle and have that be part of the design. I really hope you like this. If you do, please comment below. If you have any questions or need anything, let me know. And again, please join my Sippy Couture community Facebook group. I hope to see you in person one day because there's a few events that I'm teaching at and it's just going to be a lot of fun to start hanging out with you guys. I hope you have a great week or a great weekend, and I will see y'all soon.